And now it's time for Development Debates, where we dig deeper into some of the questions shaping the future and present of China. Today, we will discuss if Detroit's bankruptcy could happen in China. Last week, Detroit applied for bankruptcy protection. Due to the city's $18 billion plus debt, the governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder, said without applying for bankruptcy protection, the city's financial situation couldn't be solved. During the 1950s, the city's population peaked at 1.8 million people, but now there are only 700,000 left. The shrinking population left a huge hole in the local government's tax revenue. Many companies also chose to leave the city due to limited job options. All of these aggravate the city's government's financial situation and eventually led to the city's bankruptcy. On the other side of the ocean, China has also paid a lot of attention to the event. Instead of only reporting on it, Chinese media and experts have gotten into heated debates about the case. With declining traditional industries and the exorbitant high government debts, Chinese people realize the city falling into bankruptcy is very possible here as well. Chinese citizens are worried that these issues which led to Detroit's bankruptcy might happen to a Chinese city in the near future. Financial commentator Luo Qingxue doesn't think that China's cities will go bankrupt. Luo said that as the country's urbanization process keeps expanding, urban population, taxpayer numbers, and city area are increasing with it. These indicate that many cities in China are still developing. Although Luo admits that some ghost towns do exist, they only occupy a small part of the cities. So far, these ghost towns barely have any residents living in them. But it won't lead to bankruptcy, he says. Apart from that, Luo also points out that a city's bankruptcy in China wouldn't be allowed. He says that if a city fears bankruptcy, then its provincial government or possibly the central government would certainly provide financial support without hesitation. Besides just these political reasons, another crucial part is the country's household registration system, the hukou system. People in the U.S. are free to migrate to any cities they want. If too many people leave the city, it would likely go bankrupt. But this is less likely to happen in China. This is not because of the hukou system forbidding them, but it's actually because of the welfare system that connects people to their hukous. They would have to take up huge personal losses. People would rather stay in the same place rather than give up everything to start over in another city. But another financial commentator, Chiu Lin, doesn't agree with Luo's logic. Chiu wrote in his blog that China hasn't had a case as extreme as Detroit. There are already too many Chinese cities decaying. These cities usually rely heavily on single industries. Cities in the northeastern provinces are too reliant upon the iron and petroleum industries. Southeast coastal cities are heavily dependent on factory labor. These cities are now all suffering from an economic recession. When the economies of Chinese cities see a decline, the local governments try to sell land and build new urban areas to stimulate economic growth. This can only lead to more land and infrastructure waste, but nothing else. In the end, city governments are left with huge depreciation and massive debts. Chiu, citing government data, showed that during the first quarter of this year, China's local government issued over $45 billion in bonds via government-funded corporations. This number is double the amount from this time last year. If adding the previous bonds issued by the local governments, then the number might be too big for comfort. Chinese official data shows that in 2011, China's local debts reached $1.7 trillion. This number is almost equal to the quarter of China's GDP. This is higher than the government's annual fiscal revenues. If things continue to get worse, then these cities might not be able to pay people's salaries due to their heavy debt burdens. The topic of whether Chinese cities might go bankrupt is still ongoing, but the facts remain that city debts are massive. Very often the expenditures exceed revenues and there aren't many plans for offsetting the losses. However, if China's central government would provide financial support, this might be a completely different story.